Good morning, BookTube. So this morning was meant to be a live stream and a bit of a chat on Literally Liminal with Chris and Virgil. That's going to be delayed. We'll do that a bit later. But I thought I'd bring Reapy Cheap to say hello to Virgil. Say hello to Virgil. Sure. The only way Reapy Cheap could be bribed on this occasion was by food. He is a cupboard love bird, if ever there was one. Aren't you, cupboard love bird? Anyway, so instead of our chat about nothing in particular, this is going to be a chat about yet another story from The Call of Cthulhu, Another Weird Tales, as you probably figured out from the thumbnail. And this is for the spooky October reading season, which I've never done before and is proving intriguing. So the festival is the fourth story in this book. Not sure if I've ever read it before, but if I did, I didn't remember it well, and it was beautiful. I really thoroughly enjoyed it. It was published in 1923 in the January 1925 issue. Oh, it was written on October 23. It was published in January 25 in an issue of Weird Tales. Weird Tales, the first editor, Edwin Baird, one of those. It's got an I in it. I'm going to say Baird. Okay, so the first editor, Edwin Oldboy, printed a lot of early work by H.P. Lovecraft, and it could well be that Weird Tales is part of the reason why he became so popular. Though obviously his amazing writing and his whole Cthulhu mythos was a better reason. Now, starting the festival, I was in just the right mood for it. What I've come to feel is that Lovecraft is one of those mood reads, which is also for me includes poetry and some myths. You need to ride along word by word rather than sort of absorbing the whole sentence, which I think is what I tend to do when I read. So the festival has a true beauty of description to it. And with the very first words, Lovecraft creates this sense of time and place and isolation as our protagonist walks through these December streets. He's been summoned back to the town of whatever, the town that I've forgotten, by a call from his forefathers who say it's time for him to come back and worship the Christmas or Yuletide in this old town in the old way. Actually, is it ever described? I think he does say what town it is. Kingsport. Kingsport. Outspread frostily in the gloaming. I'm not doing well here, am I? Never mind. I saw Kingsport outspread frostily in the gloaming. Snowy Kingsport, with its ancient vanes and steeples, ridge poles and chimney pots, wharves and small bridges, willow trees and graveyards, endless labyrinths of steep, narrow, crooked streets, and dizzy, church-crowned central peak that time durst not touch. Durst. Such a good word. Where's it gone? Anyhow, so reading up on it a bit, I understand that this story was inspired by Lovecraft's first visit to Marblehead, Massachusetts. And it is set in America, which you can tell it mentions the Puritans, which is an American phenomena. And this path through Kingsport, however, is meant to correspond to a route through the centre of Marblehead. And the house with an overhanging second story, it covers the street so much that it nearly covers the overhang from the opposite side, is thought to be based on a real story, on a real building, Marblehead's number 1 Mugford Street. So it's all about New England motif. And apparently it was also influenced by a couple of books he'd read which talked about pre-Aryan sorcerers who preserved primitive rites. Now, I like the whole notion. The writing is beautiful. In actual fact, not a lot happens here. We have the protagonist return to the Kingsport of his forefathers, where he's meant to meet up with some older relatives. They're meant to celebrate Yuletide in the old fashion. And Lovecraft keeps harping on how the rites like these go back before Christianity, before the settlement of the country, which was 300 years ago, apparently, according to whenever this story happened. And so on and so forth. So our protagonist is admitted into this house by a creepy old man whose face is so mobile it seems waxen, as if he's wearing a mask. He's shown into a creepy old parlour where there's a woman at a spinning wheel and maybe someone else sitting that he can't see. And he is shown to a seat where he starts reading a book, and it is the unmentionable Necronomicon. That book. You all know which one I'm talking about. I challenge you to say it in person. Anyhow, Necronomicon. That book is not a real book. My understanding is that it was invented by Lovecraft and it's part of his whole Cthulhu mythos, but it has become so part of our belief system that when I was playing D&D back in the day, I found that a lot of people actually thought it was a real book. I don't think it is. Tell me. Or maybe I'll Google it later. Because let me tell you, when I started role-playing, back in the day when we were young, there was no Google. We had to invent it all. Anyhow, so having been admitted to this house, after a while they don cloaks with hoods and they go down to the town towards this church on the hill, which is also based on a real church apparently. And this town of Kingsport, which had been completely deserted with no one on the streets and no footsteps on the snow and a few lighted windows but not many, has suddenly come alive as everyone streams out of the houses and down the streets and up to this church. Now when he finally goes into the church, he realizes that they're not going into the church, they're going down, down, down into the bowels of the earth through a secret tunnel in the church. And then down to the bowels of the earth where the rest of the story happens. And essentially the beauty of this story is the word by word, second by second reading of it. The sense of impending doom that you get throughout is gorgeous, and it's got a remarkably satisfying ending. When you think about it, Lovecraft did endings. He really got them. There's a lot of great stories out there where the ending lets you down, but I don't know that I've ever had a Lovecraft story whose ending let me down. Anyhow, it's a great story. And it's not a long one, so I've probably talked about it almost longer than it'll take you to read it. But I read it on the beach in the sun. Perfect timing for it. Not traditional, but perfect. Okay, so that is the fourth story in this book. This is the fourth one that I have read out of this book for the spooky October thingy-majig. 12 stories in this book. And now I find myself running into a problem. I purchased this novel last November 24. And I am 99% certain that when I purchased it, I sat straight down and read a couple of the books. I know I've read the Dunwich Horror before. I know I've read The Call of Cthulhu. And I know I've read The Shadow over Innsmouth. Not sure if I read them recently. And this is why reviews on Goodreads are so important for me. I don't remember always. If I start reading one within 2 pages, I will remember that I've read it, but I don't always remember. So, thank you for watching this one. I am still trying to decide if my next short story for the month will be from The Call of Cthulhu, Stephen King's Nightmares and Dreamscapes, or the final one in the second Hammer Horror Omnibus. Let me know what you think. I don't promise to follow your recommendations, but last time I did. Have a great day. Read good books. Always read good books.